দর্শক আমন্ত্রণ জানাচ্ছি চ্যানেল 24 এর নিয়মিত আয়োজন মুখোমুখিতে। মুখোমুখিতে প্রতি পর্বে আমাদের সাথে একজন বিশেষ অতিথি থাকে। আজকেও আছে। আজকে আমাদের সাথে আছে টিফং। ওয়েলকাম টু দ্য শো।
Thank you, Hasib. Very nice to meet you.
Thank you. And if I'm not wrong, you are the regional CEO and you look out after the PSA.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So what do you do there?
I am wearing two hats. I'm the regional CEO of the Middle East and South Asia region, and I also look after global business development. So that is entering into new projects, whether it's in port, logistics, or related technology.
Good. So Singapore port is just sort of magic. It changed the world, it changed the business, it changed everything. How does it possible 24 hours, 365 a day? You're not tired?
Well, I think the Singapore port, right, has been built over many generations and over many decades. And we started right from zero. Mm-hmm. It was only in 1972 that we started handling our very first container vessel. And it took a long while, right, for it to grow from 1 TEU to the first million TEU. And then, once the network started to build, it started to accelerate exponentially. And today, PSA International is more than just Singapore port, right? We are present around the world. And last year, we handled over 91 million TEUs globally.
I can't imagine. Yeah. Seriously, it's beyond my imagination.
Come visit us, and we will be very happy, right, to show you and your audience and give you a real feel of how we manage and run the ports, and more importantly, meet our team.
Right. So how many countries do you work with right now?
We are present in 42 countries, right? And today PSA is present in those countries not only in ports, but also in land logistics assets, like inland container depots, container freight stations, warehouses. And on top of that, we also have a global network of colleagues and operations in logistics solutions and freight forwarding.
And also, you also help other countries to grow this logistics?
Yes, we do. Right? We work in close partnership with all our host countries and partners. I would say that PSA embraces partnership. Over 80% of our projects are partnerships.
80%?
Yes.
That's huge.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
So, I wonder how many people really work for this giant company.
Right now, I would say that we have 50 over 1,000 colleagues. Yes.
Only in Singapore?
No, globally.
Globally?
Globally, yes. So, you do need a lot of people, but at the same time, right, there's a lot of innovation that is ongoing to ensure that our employees and contractors are upgrading their skills as well as our delivery.
That's important. So, your company is taking care of 52,000 families. That's very important. That's interesting.
Huge responsibility.
Yeah, that's really huge. Yeah. So, out of your long experience, you're coming to Bangladesh. It's very good to know. Give me some idea what's going on, how long it will be, what will be your job, and how you will help Bangladesh.
Okay. Actually, Bangladesh has always been a very important market, right, to PSA. For many, many years now. In fact, a lot of the cargo, right, whether it's imports or exports for Bangladesh, actually pass through PSA ports. In this region, right, Singapore as a hub, right, does play a very critical role in connecting the cargo and the vessels that are serving Bangladesh. I am very glad that there is this opportunity, right, that has opened up over the last few years for PSA to participate in the Bay Terminal project in Tejgaon or Tejgaon. And this is one where it's an opportunity to be directly involved, boots on the ground, working closely in partnership with the government of Bangladesh, ministries, as well as very importantly, the Tejgaon Port Authority. So we envisage, right, the plans to be one where we will be able to build and develop and operate a modern terminal, which is very much needed to keep in line with the growth of Bangladesh.
Okay, and how long the whole establishment will take place? How long that will take?
I think the process is actually gaining momentum right now, and this is under the auspices of a G2G MOU between the PPP authority as well as the Enterprise Singapore, right, which is an agency in the government of Singapore. So under the auspices of this MOU, right, we are working very closely, and I think in the coming months and years, right, you will see that the project will advance into execution phase.
Okay. I don't have any idea, but how many ships can come and can relieve their goods and then go back? So any plan on that?
I think that's one where when we get down into capacity planning, and of course it depends on the size of the ships, but what is being planned, certainly is capacity, right, which is 2 to 3 million TEUs. Okay. More importantly, it is modern facilities which are able to handle the larger modern vessels.
Like big vessels.
Yes, big vessels, which are important, right, in terms of lowering the cost of sea freight.
Right,
all right.
right.
Very important in terms of downstream efficiencies. I think as PSA, right, approaches this opportunity to develop port and logistics in Bangladesh, it doesn't just stop, at the port. Right? We are also, right, working towards enlarging the ecosystem, right, to ensure that the efficiency stretches from the berth through the yard, through the gates, how it's transported in an efficient, but very importantly, in line with sustainability, right, to get the cargo all the way, right, to the end users. Right? So worth thinking in terms of the entire ecosystem, anywhere from infrastructure, right, to the logistics assets and solutions which are required, and in time to come, right, with the accompanying digital platforms as well.
Okay, so you said it's a multifaceted port, so it's gonna have some goods and then maybe koila and then things like that. Like, what are the things can be delivered in this port?
Okay, I think the primary focus will certainly be on containers. Right, containers certainly are the most efficient, right, cost-effective way of moving cargo. However, we also recognize that the pace of development of Bangladesh is fast and furious, and apart from containerized cargo, there are other types of cargo, right? Project cargo, bulk, break bulk, and I think these are elements or other types of cargo that PSA has the expertise in, and very importantly, how to handle them safely in addition to handling them efficiently. Right, so we certainly hope for the opportunity to work very closely with CPA, right, in terms of handling not only containerized cargo, but also, right, the other types of cargo which are very much needed for the growth of the Bangladesh economy.
What are the size of the ship we are looking at coming to the bay terminal? Say, for example, it may, because the place is not that big, so the draft of the ship is very important. We have seen ship having draft of 25 meters right now, traveling around the sea. Can we imagine or looking into that direction, or initially we have some plan?
25 meters probably is, extremely large vessels. We're not seeing vessels that large yet. We're talking about in the context of Bangladesh, right, where the draft is quite limited by natural causes, and currently, right, we're getting vessels of about 2,000, to 3,000 TEUs, but with the bay terminal port, right, we will see a doubling of the capacity, right, in terms of the ship sizes. So we're talking about 5,000 TEU vessels, and in addition to that, I think the draft, right, will also deepen to about 12 to 13 meters, thereabouts. So this is quite significant, right, in terms of the multiplier effect, right, on the vessels that are calling on Chattogram today.
How you see that Bangladesh economy may be change once the port start working? And as you see the growing economy, there are a lot of people. We have the best thing we have that we have a lot of young people.
Yes.
And that may be helpful for this project, and then how your project or your work will benefit the economy.
Okay. I think what is very relevant and synchronizes with the stage growth that we're going through right now here is that PSA actually started as the Port of Singapore Authority, right, many decades ago. And when we were a port authority, we were both a regulator as well as the operator. And in the early days of nation building for Singapore, right, when Singapore was actually, our economy was much smaller, right, there was certainly a need, right, to keep the freight and logistics costs low in order, right, for imports to be, and exports for that matter, to be kept competitive. There was also a role, right, to create employment opportunities. So PSA was very central, right, in terms of port development, providing, right, opportunities for employment, for upskilling of the staff, but very key to the economy, right, keeping the port open, and hence competitive for downstream industries and consumption. I think we see a very similar need here in Bangladesh. Right now, Bangladesh, as is growing, fast and furious, there is a need to modernize the ports, right, in order to ensure that rather than congestion, there are efficiencies, there is productivity, right? And as you know, anything that's efficient and productive, right, this will lead, right, to a reduction, right, of the logistics costs. I think more importantly, the removal of any logistics bottlenecks increases the attractiveness of Bangladesh, right, as a place to do business in, right, and the port, right, a place, right, to ship your cargo through. Okay, as PSA, approaches the Bay Terminal project development, we recognize that job creation, right, meaningful employment, knowledge transfer, right, are very key, especially with a very young and willing population. Okay, so our goals are very simple. It is not just to handle cargo for the sake of it. At the end of the day, right, this is meant, right, to facilitate, right, the growth of trade, the growth of the economy of Bangladesh, and to connect Bangladesh to the rest of the world, right, through increased efficiencies and connectedness in the network.
Right. So as you said, you've been working with 40 to 42 countries.
Yes.
And all our ports, sea. So natural disaster is very obvious. And Bangladesh is one of those places where these disasters are unstoppable, and we have records of these disasters. How you manage the port, or what is the magic that you play and you try to save the port during this time of disasters?
Yeah. You seem to like the word magic a lot, right? But of course, we always hope for good graces, but there is a lot of planning, and there's a lot of science and risk management to it. I think in terms of the dangers, that we see, quite apart from the natural disasters, and we do operate in many parts of the world where it is prone to, even like earthquakes, high winds, and so forth, right? And in Bangladesh, it's no different. I think, in fact, with global warming, right, the situation is potentially also going to be compounded, right, with acute climate changes. Certainly, right, as we are approaching terminal design, not only for this project, but in our other projects, we are taking into account future needs like rising sea levels.
Yes.
Okay. Apart from that, you're talking about other risks like cybersecurity.
Yes.
Cyber terrorism, rather.
Yeah.
Okay. And today,
that's a big threat to the ports.
It's a very big threat, right? So, not something you can see, right? And I think that's even worse because it strikes you silently when you least expect it. Right? So, from infrastructure to digital, right? PSA as a global team, internally is what we call the PSA franchise, right? And we are, of course, going to deploy the PSA franchise across of managing all these risks, right? From natural disasters all the way to cyber security, in order to make sure, right, that the port, being such a critical asset to the country, is one that is kept open 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
And how do you manage this hackers, stuff like that?
We have a strong team, right, both at the headquarters as well as at the various regions, which work then very closely with each of our operating units in terms of ensuring that the measures are being maintained, right, being deployed, and constantly, right, we are undergoing exercises to make sure that we are ready. Okay, One other risk, quite apart from natural disaster cybersecurity, the port is an industrial area.
Yes.
Right? And the personal safety, work health safety is very, very important. Okay, and we are certainly very focused in the construction stage as well as in the operational stage. So this is not one where any compromises will be made, and you can be assured, whatever safety systems that we have in place, and today, we have the ability to augment it, with technology and also, with AI, to enhance, our approach towards security.
Is that the draft issue, water draft issue, PS also look at, or you have some other friends to look at this issue?
No, the draft issue is certainly one, that is very key, to determining the design of the overall port, So that includes also public infrastructure, like the need for breakwaters, capital dredging, and how you design the port. I think for starters, the Bay Terminal project, as the name suggests, is in the Bay of Bengal, as opposed to being a port, which is up a river, where the draft, is severely limited. So this already unleashes, the potential, to receive the larger vessels as we talked about. Okay, these larger vessels actually will provide the opportunity to have direct services, between Bangladesh and a network of global ports, global markets.
So we also have that. Thank you. I just wonder if you want to answer this question. We also have seen in the South Asia bigger countries with the bigger ports, and they fail to management, and they become, they become loser. We have seen that. I don't know whether your company has that experience, but why is that people make big ports and they take benefit out of it? Is that the managerial issue? Is that the safety security issue? Is that the loyalty issue? People, because the people who handles this, there is a complaint of overvoice, invoice, stuff like that. What's really become wrong when it's failed any port? Out of your experience, what do you say?
For ports that don't work. Yeah. Okay. I think ports, are very interesting because the local operating environments, have a very big impact, on the characteristics of each and every port, and for that matter, a terminal. So, it's very hard to generalize. But from our experience, I would say that, the key risks, to successful port development are, number one, having the lack of a very clear master plan. Okay. And I think in today's world, the master plan not pertaining only to, the waterfront development, but very importantly, how the master plan caters for the connectivity inland, on the land side, to the industry. Okay, yeah. So you may have a great port, however, if the landside services and connectivity, to the population centers or to industry, are not efficient, you will have a port that does not grow. Okay. Yeah. I would say then zooming in, to the port area, coming back, to a master plan, I think it is very important, for the stakeholders and the authorities, to be working hand in hand with the private operators to ensure that capacity, is being introduced at a rate, that is ahead, but not too far ahead of where demand is. Because ports are actually long-term infrastructure investment projects, and they require a lot of capital, from private investors, but also, from governments, because there's a lot of supporting public infrastructure, whether it's breakwaters, whether it is the connecting roads and railways, which are required to make the port successful. And for ports that suffer from overcapacity, or they are built, well ahead of time, it does nobody any good, because it does not become viable. right? You need the port, right, to be something which is bankable, okay? And the port, while a lot of
Right for the moment.
right from the start and throughout, right, its life. And we're talking about ports, having lives of, 20, 25, 30, and even 50 years, right? But how do you get ports, whether it's the concrete or the equipment, all right, to be able to last a long term? Actually, a lot of maintenance, all right, a lot of upgrades, a lot of reinvestment is actually required. So, one of the primary reasons, as we've seen, that ports don't work is because, the concession, right, may not be structured correctly, right? I think there's also a role for the operators to manage them efficiently, effectively, right, from both an operation as well as financial standpoint, right? And it all goes hand in hand, right, to make sure, right, that it is viable and sustainable, right, for the long term.
Right. So how much is spending for this Bay Port, and how long this will how much is expending, and how this financial, you're having these capitals?
Sure. I think we're talking about, a project that goes into the billions, all right? And that actually cuts across both the public infrastructure, all right, that actually needs to be created, as well as the superstructure and the equipment, right, that also needs to be invested in. Right? So, it is by no means a small project at all, because everything, including, capital costs, equipment costs, right, it has all actually gone up over the last few years.
So, how much, what about the connectivity about, say, for example, port to the mainland, like roads, rails, and how these will be managed?
I think this is one where, in our journey, right, we will have to work very closely, right, with the different ministries and the authorities in terms of the planning, right, and the development of the connecting roads and railways. I think there are also support facilities, right, which are required to be at the right places, like the rail terminals, container depots. Okay, I think it is one where there has to be clear goals, right, set together. In terms of percentage of cargo, right, being handled by rail, right, as opposed to by road. I think sustainability objectives are inescapable, right? In fact, we should look at them, right, not as hindrances, but the opportunity, right, to create sustainability solutions. I think as we speak, right, Bangladesh, right, is undergoing, several key thrusts, right, of which, trying to drive, right, future sources of renewable energy, right, is also one of them, right? What PSA is doing in other parts of our portfolio is that, we have also embarked on purchasing renewable sources of energy, right? We are also looking, right, at deploying, electric vehicles where we can. We already, electrify our equipment, okay? And as much as we can run on renewable energy, not only within the port, right, but extending this, right, into the logistics chain, right, to the end customers, we believe that this also will help the end customers, right, the industry, achieve, right, their carbon emissions reduction goals.
Right. Yeah. My last two questions. So, we've been talking about, before the show, about the Mumbai port. Tell us more about it.
Well, PSA, in fact, has been operating in India over the last 25 years. So this year we're celebrating a milestone. And we have a footprint of 4 container terminals, 2 container freight stations, as well as a large team, right, which provides logistics and intermodal solutions. Okay, we won the concession, right, to develop a greenfield project in the port of Nhava, and our terminal is called PSA Mumbai. At this, we started operations, right, in 2018, and in fact, we were given 3 years, right, to develop the project, full reclamation, right, and phase 1 comprised of 110 hectares, 1 kilometer of berth. Very proud to share, that against all odds, we managed to complete phase 1 development on time, right, and on budget as well. We are currently, right, undergoing phase 2 development, and this will be completed by 2025. When phase 2 is completed, PSA Mumbai will be India's single largest container terminal, right, at 5 million TEUs capacity. Yes. Phase 1 has been growing very rapidly. I mentioned earlier that we started operations in 2018. And this year, we foresee, right, with the pace of growth, that we will, right, be hitting about 2 million TEUs in terms of the volume being handled. I think more importantly, I think it's the way that, you know, we are contributing, right, to the improvement of port and logistics in India. A lot of the cargo, right, that comes through PSA Mumbai is actually being connected by rail. With the development of PSA Mumbai, we have actively, right, been developing not only the maritime connectivity, but very importantly, the land-side connectivity. And we have, in fact, right now, the highest number of connection points by rail compared to any other terminal in India. So
That's huge.
it's changing the landscape, right? What perhaps used to make sense, you know, to put cargo onto a smaller vessel and sail into a smaller port, right? Maybe perhaps on the east of India, it perhaps makes more sense to put on the larger regular service calling on PSA Mumbai and, you know, moving the cargo onwards by rail. And it actually becomes cheaper, and in fact, the transit time is even faster. And to add to that, you know, because of the rail movement, it is actually greener as well. Okay, so coming back actually to the opportunities here in Bangladesh, we certainly hope, right, to listen, right, and learn about the requirements from the customers here. We want to work hand in hand in partnership with the government of Bangladesh, with BIDA, Bangladesh Investment Development Authority, in terms of making, right, Bangladesh an attractive place, right, for, you know, more FDI, particularly, you know, in manufacturing, in line with the government's goals to diversify the economy, right? And to do so, I think we have to be attuned to the requirements, right, of the customers. And in this way, right, we can work backwards, right, to ensure that the port and logistics solutions and assets, right, that we will be investing in and designing, right, will meet those needs.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. I have learned a lot of things from you about port, business, and how it may help Bangladesh. And thank you so much for being in the show.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
দর্শক, আমরা কথা বলছিলাম চিফ ওংয়ের সাথে। তিনি পিএসএ রিজিওনাল সিও। তিনি আশা করেন 40টা দেশে তারা যে কাজ করছে সেই 40টা দেশের মতো বাংলাদেশেও আগামীতে এই পোর্ট বাংলাদেশের অর্থনীতিকে নিয়ে যাবে সে কাঙ্ক্ষিত লক্ষ্যমাত্রায়। দেখা হবে মুখোমুখির অন্য কোনো পর্বে অন্য কোনো অতিথির সাথে। নিরাপদে থাকুন, সুস্থ থাকুন।